Hey, welcome everyone to CC30, where we open the bonnet on hiring and recruitment, and also just optimizing that whole talent strategy. Today with me, I've got Damien, who is the co-founder of Talent Optimizers, and we're going to dive into a little bit more around the sort of psychological, behavioral sort of side of optimizing your talent strategy. So welcome, Damien. How are you?
Thank you. I must say, I'm based in the US now, so when you say bonnet, open for bonnet, I get a bit confused. I now say hood. So I'm starting to turn American, which is unfortunate.
Oh no, yeah. Well, actually, that's a good starting point, really, to be honest, because we it was great connecting last week, and discovering that we've got shared UK roots. So for everyone, we grew up in towns right next to each other in the UK, just as luck would have it. But for the listeners too, could you briefly introduce yourself again, and share your story around how you came to find talent optimization. So, sorry.
Yeah, sure. So Damon Clark, originally from the UK and grew up in the wonderful South Coast in Barton-on-Sea, where you went to school. So I know your old school well. So yeah, I
Go.
basically started off in the tech industry after I graduated. And the story is it kind of all dates back to quite early on in my early 20s, but I always sensed my manager had a frustration with me. And I knew I was one of the better performers, but I couldn't quite figure out why he always seemed frustrated with me. And I ended up doing a DISC type assessment, and it just changed my life. So DISC is a behavioral assessment. It's about understanding your natural hardwiring when it comes to behavior and how you communicate. And I realized after doing that, he was quite analytical and I was quite high level. And so when he asked me how I was doing, I'd give quite a high level answer, quite vague. And he was looking for that detail. So after doing the assessment, I realized I needed to adapt my communication and say something like, hey, John, I'm 80% of my number. I think I'll finish at 120 at the end of the quarter and I need help with ABC. So as soon as I kind of adapted that communication, our relationship got better. We're still friends today. And I became obsessed with personal development and kind of almost hacking, improvement. I realized if you read books, I mean, we got told this at school, but I didn't believe it. If you read books and go on courses and do training, you get better. And so I became obsessed with personal development, particularly behavioral science.
Mm.
And then I spent 12, 15 years in the tech industry for companies like Acer Computers and Fujitsu Siemens and Dell EMC, and eventually left and set up a training company based in the UK, focused on that's the story in itself. But originally it was focused on corporate team building and development, but we ended up with 12 odd climbing gyms and island we did survival training on, and one of the largest Duke of Edinburgh providers in the country. So that grew like crazy for 10 years. Then I sold that to be closer to my wife's family over here in Boston, USA. And now I actually ended up working at an assessment company. I basically begged them for a job because I knew who they were. And at the time, it was just pre-investment and they weren't quite the company they are now. And I kept on talking to them, and eventually I think they got fed up with me. And I even actually offered to clean their toilets. I even in the telephone interview said, listen, I don't care what you've got. I want to come over. And eventually they gave me a job. So I did that for 3, 4 years, training consultants on behavioral science. And I did a lot of business advice on growing businesses and integrating their solution into that business. So a lot of them were executive coaches or HR consultants. So my job was to train them on the behavioral science and how to kind of grow their business with it. And then I got talent optimized. The company's a talent optimization consultancy, and I got talent optimized out of the company in a fantastic way. I thought I was getting a promotion, and they said, well, we haven't got anything for you, but we don't want to lose you, but we do have some global clients we need some help with. Would you be up for kind of taking them over independently? So then I moved into their partner network and became one of their partners. So I'm 4 years in now. Interestingly, if I hadn't been a success, it would have been quite embarrassing because my job was to train these partners on how to grow a business and how to get customers so if I had kind of gone partner side and failed, I would have looked pretty silly and I would have just had to have a completely different career change. So there's a lot of pressure in kind of building the business. So yeah, we're 4 years in. We got 70 odd clients across the world. Organizations like 8x8 and Virgin Voyages. And our job is basically to build talent strategies and align talent to execute business strategy. We do a little bit of business strategy because that's really important to get sorted first. But then we come in and we work with the leadership team and the rest of the organization to make sure they're developed and trained to actually execute that strategy. And we use a lot of behavioral science to do that.
Mm. No, it's an interesting route into, going from tech into behavioral science, almost, if you will. So I think everyone that would probably be listening to this would be like, it's very, very interesting route, but what was the sort of biggest lesson that you learned about, people and performance during that, entrepreneurial shift phase carrying into the current organization that you're running today?
Uh, I wish I knew now what I knew then in terms of behavior. Yeah. So again, that story of my manager being frustrated with me, that's not an isolated incident. So in corporate, I'm a Six Sigma ride. We call it a maverick. We've got in the solution I sell, it's called Predictive Index, and we have 17 reference profiles, and they're called names like Maverick, Scholar, Artisan, Guardian, Captain, Maverick. I'm a Maverick, which basically means, and also I'm we call it a widespread Maverick, meaning that my natural workplace behavior is very quite extreme and predictable. And quite unusual. So I'm very comfortable with ambiguity. I'm very extrovert. I'm very fast paced. I'm a starter, not a finisher. I don't follow rules, Maverick. And there's strengths with that, there's some huge strengths, but also some caution areas and some challenges which I wasn't aware of in my corporate career. And although I definitely had a successful corporate career and led teams at some very large organizations, I felt what was holding me back was that lack of self-awareness.
Mm,
And now I almost have a kind of cheat code to understand my behavior and how to adapt it better. I mean, I had that visibility earlier on in my career, but
mm.
not to the level I have now. And so I think the question was, what was the question? It was, repeat it again for me.
Yeah, it's just more about the sort of biggest lessons that you learned from transitioning from, or about people and performance as you transition from that entrepreneurial phase into talent optimizers, really.
Um, well, actually, I'll maybe answer in a different way. Being a
Sure.
maverick, what's good about being a maverick is being an entrepreneur. I'm comfortable just to get stuck in, figure things out. So
Mm,
with your own business, I have to do my own fine. I have to do everything. I have to
yeah,
just figure
you're
out a
telling
way to
me.
get it done. Yeah, so my natural hard wiring is very good at that. In corporate, interestingly, the what gets these companies growing normally is that maverick behavior, that entrepreneurial behavior, which is what kind of starts an organization. But then as the organization builds, what happens is you got to build scalability and structure. So then you've got a whole bunch of people not wanting to be maverick and creative and make mistakes.
Mm,
And so you get a kind of conformity, you get that managing up, you get that kind of good corporate citizen. And funny enough, we do a bit of work in this, and what drives companies to the next stage is having that risk, having that kind of willingness to make mistakes and to kind of push the envelope. And unfortunately, it's normally suppressed, and so yeah, that transition, I definitely thrive more in an entrepreneurial space from a corporate space, and that's a shame because I think a lot of good talent is lost in corporates because they're seen as difficult. But
mm,
usually they're high dominance. They like to insert influence on people events. They're fast paced, they're creative, they're imaginative, they're willing to make mistakes. And that unnerves companies. And in fact, sometimes that's what gets gets you to the next stage is embracing those behavioral types. So in terms of a transition, I don't know if I answered that completely perfectly, but I definitely thrive more in an entrepreneurial setting.
Yeah. It takes me back to and I'm sure there are people that will be listening to this where they've had, disc assessments or sort of some profiling, behavioral profiling of some sort at a company before. And it was quite fascinating seeing that come back, and more we're seeing them in job applications as well to really understand the candidate that's coming through. Also, maybe just to bad terminology, but trim the fat because there are so many people applying for roles at the moment in this day and age. But what I wanted to actually just rewind a little bit and about yourself, because this is for me, this is borderline like, okay, not quite psychology, but it is absolutely psychology at the same time. So did you go into like at school or at uni or anything like that? Did you go into any sort of teaching, learning about that, or was it more, courses and you're just really curious into the industry and that's where you launch padded from?
Yeah, I as a manager and a leader, I mean, I went on those courses, those I
Mm,
was very lucky to work at some amazing companies which really invested in our development. So I was very fortunate to not only get really good exposure to some of the top leaders in the world. I mean, I worked under, I can name two or three, leaders who went on to be, global, titans of the industry globally. So that was good. And then, I mean, I was lucky to go on these courses, all the, you know, Dale Carnegie courses and all that
mm,
type of stuff. Um, but I didn't do, I mean, I did business at university. But when I went to Predictive Index, it really accelerated for learning because I got access to all their certification on behavioral science. So my job really was I came from a sales and marketing background and I had my own business previously in the UK and it was successful and I sold it. So my job really was to train these independent consultants, some were like larger companies, some were smaller, but really to get them to implement the solution. It's a software solution. It's an amazing solution. It does a number of things from right people, right seats and hiring to coaching to team development. It was to kind of integrate it into their business and grow their business. So I was a sales and marketing basically consultant.
mm.
But along that journey, I got to go on all their courses and became a practitioner. So that's my background really is I was lucky enough to kind of get on all the certification courses. And now we train them as a trainer. So what we do is go into the organizations and rather than keep on coming in, what we try and do is set up the company to run the system themselves. In
Hmm.
the olden days, you'd be reliant on a specialist to come in and it'd cost a fortune. But
Mm.
now, because of the software, what we can do is implement the software, train the internal team, and they can run it themselves. So it's a very different way of working now. We can enable these organizations to take more ownership on training behavioral science because it's all in the software. So you don't need that super expert knowledge anymore. So our job is to go in and I can do a knowledge transfer into that client and set them up with the software. So
Right.
yeah, I am a specialist in workplace behavior, but it's through, practitioner courses and doing independent courses.
Yeah. No, nice. I was curious about that, and yeah, because it's a topic that interests me as it would do a lot of other people that are out there and listening to this as well. Because, like I said before, it really helps with understanding who you're dealing with, and maybe that
I
brings
think
us on quite.
everyone, so we do a kind of, it's called Decode Workplace Behavior.
Yeah,
It's our kind of foundation course through the Predictive Index. We also do DISC, by the way. We do all the DISC courses as well and Myers-Briggs. But I think everyone should do it.
yeah.
Everyone should jump on that course because it's just amazing and it's just life changing. Just understand that self awareness of what where conflict comes from, particularly of behavior and where your caution areas are and why how it happens and the kind of science behind it is applicable to anybody.
So I'm thinking for those that are really starting out, they're entrepreneurs right now, just one seat, one person doing as much as they possibly can, try and get the boat moving. If they went on that course and found that, their positives and strengths, how would that then benefit them moving that boat a little bit faster down the stream, and getting to
Oh,
their end goal?
yeah, I'm passionate about this subject. So I think there's a lot of people out there giving advice and charging for advice.
Yep.
And when you kind of when you really peel back the onion a little bit, sometimes, you know, there, I think we spoke about this before, it's easier to, in my industry, you get a lot of coaches. And what happens is it's easier to make money telling other coaches how to be a coach than it is to be a coach. So ironically, there's bigger industry because there's not actually that many people to coach. And so it's a bigger industry teaching other people to coach, but they're never going to coach. So they'll end up doing what you're doing, which is teaching other people to coach. So it's our industry. So I'm happy to give that advice for free because it just really upsets me. But we do a free on our website. Check out our website. We do a free behavioral assessment. Have you done yours yet?
No,
Oh,
not
six
yet.
minutes.
So hang on, give me one.
So, yeah, we do a free behavioral assessment on our website, and it's going to go through your natural hardwiring, your strengths, and your caution areas. So, if I was going to give some advice for someone moving into that business space, the first bit, I'll give 3 bits of advice for free. Be very careful on the people you take advice from trying to charge you. First of all, buy either 2 books, EOS, Entrepreneurial Operating System, or Scaling Up, which is a business operating strategy, how to kind of do your, long-term goal, short-term goal, quarterly goal, how to set up your goals and your objectives to do them, how to run meetings. That's the most important place to start, is be very systematic on your growth. The other one is Simon Sinek's Start of a Why, to really
Yes.
position yourself. And then the behavior is important. So, I think the market's tough because there's always people telling you should be doing this and all trying to make money out of you.
Mm,
So, although I specialize in behavior, my recommendation is to start off with that strategy piece and start of a why, really position yourself. Then yeah, how behavior kicks in is this understanding what your strengths are and the stuff you're going to ignore. So what's going to happen is we're all hardwired to want to do the stuff we enjoy. If you like creativity and innovation and agility, you're going to kind of focus on that type of work. Your process work and precision work and your scalability and your numbers and your details can get ignored because you're just not hardwired to think about it. You don't like that. It's going to drain you.
mm,
So understanding your natural behavior tendencies can be really important and really help you.
mm. No, it's and then just trying to find solutions for those areas that you're not, accelerating at, or even delegate if you're in that position.
Yeah, or
You know,
be realistic, be
mm.
realistic or yeah, delegate.
What do you mean by
Um,
being realistic in a sort of layman's terms?
I mean, a lot of people go into business. I think an example. Some of the best coaches out there end up crashing and burning,
Mm.
and some of the worst do really well because they're good at sales and marketing.
Ah,
So if you're being entrepreneurial, being, before you put all your life savings and investment and time and risk into it, I would seek some advice to really figure out if you got what it takes. You know, is the market you're playing in, is there a realistic chance for you to make some money? I mean, we often gravitate towards things which are cool and fun. Like, I mean, I own
mm.
some climbing gyms, so I can tell you all about that. Everyone wants to own a climbing gym. They don't make much money. So, we all want to be photographers or we all want to be business coaches. Like the stuff we want to be, the markets tend to be very hard and saturated. That's not to say you shouldn't do it if you're passionate about it, that's fine, but you got to be realistic about that market and how competitive it is. Also, do you have that background to do it? If you want to be a consultant, I always default to leadership coaching, but I mean, we
Mm.
do I mean, we do leadership coaching, but our main part of the business is working with organizations to set up talent strategies. And part of that would be some leadership coaching. But, a lot of leadership coaches out there, have we look at, are you competent to do that? And when I
Mm,
think about competency, have you had experience? Have you been in that seat before? And then most people wanting leadership coaches who are going to pay you money are C-suite or VPs. Have you been in
mm,
that seat before? Have you got a qualification? Um, uh, have you got a methodology? So when we think about competence, you want at least two of those three things. You either want direct experience of doing that job, you need a qualification, and a methodology on how you do it, kind of a process. So if you haven't got that, then you got to be realistic with yourself and say, okay, I may not be able to do that. So first of all, is really being realistic about the market you're going into, really realistic about your talents or your competencies, and
mm.
also understanding the numbers and how much run rate you have until you burn out and where you're going to
Mm.
find that business.
That's
Um,
interesting. I think it's interesting that there's that whole sort of scenario there where you've got you either go on the course, you've had position time in the role, or you've got a methodology, and I think that's quite a good sort of structure around that. And then that got me thinking, okay, well, what are the sort of classic challenges that you see, or what are the sort of the obstacles that they have to overcome, especially around leadership teams and leaders, that sort of force them to seek out, talent optimizers? Like, why are they coming to you? What are the sort of common problems that they're trying to solve?
yeah, first of all, I just want to say I don't want to be negative. I think, there's nothing better from jumping in and learning and making mistakes. Yeah. So
Yeah,
on the flip
maverick,
side to that,
right?
there's many successful, happy people who weren't successful and happy because they didn't have the nerve to go and do it. Okay.
Mm,
So I'm being a bit cynical there, but uh, balance that out with sometimes it's okay to get stuck in and fail as well. I don't want to
for
be too
sure.
negative on that. Okay, but so we don't really work with entrepreneurs. I'm passionate about the subject and I'm passionate about helping. I don't. We do. I don't charge for advice. As I said, I have a thing about other people offering us advice because I feel it's a bit of a snake oil industry. So anybody out there who wants some help, please get in contact. I'll give my help for free and I'll save you a lot of money. But we work with enterprise, large mid to large enterprises. So we don't actually work with entrepreneurs, but I'm just passionate about helping and encouraging
Mm.
people.
Then I suppose let's turn it towards those mid and large enterprises then. So with the leadership teams embedded within those much bigger organizations where they're spinning several plates at any one time, what are the sort of what are the sort of key reasons that they'd come to you? Is it poor communication? Is it accountability, lack of trust? Like what are those sort of well, first off, is there a common thread? And if so, what is that?
There is. So usually they come to us because there's dysfunction in the leadership team,
Hmm.
or they do an engagement survey and find out their engagement survey results are very low and
Mm,
they're kind of plateauing. So most of our clients come to us because of that. Now, we do get a few who are just super, we call them people first, proactive people first organizations. We have a few clients who kind of are ahead of that. They realize that people are the most important part of their business. And they realize that if things aren't going to go well, it's because of people. It always is.
mm.
So they're kind of
Funny that.
ahead of a curve. It's they're like, okay, let's just invest in people before we get a problem. So we have got some of those clients, and I'm very lucky to work with a few of them, and they're just a pleasure to work with. But for the most part, yeah, they come to us because of either dysfunction in the leadership team. Maybe it's a growing business and having problems, or maybe they've plateaued and there's some friction, or there's an engagement issue in the business, or retention or engagement. So that's why someone reaches out initially, yeah. And there's a common, I can dig, if you want me to, I can dig further into that dysfunction and where it comes from if that's useful.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, but I think it'd be interesting to expand on.
Yeah, so there's a common theme. There's a common theme.
Cool.
Um, often they don't have that robust way of developing, implementing, and tracking strategy.
Mm,
And that comes before me. I can do some work and we can stop the bleed quickly and we can get stuck in and do some developments. But having that foundation and that structure on how you operate your business. And I said before, it's your North Star, your long-term plan. That's your 3-year plan, 2-year plan, your quarterly plan, and how you manage those goals. What performance management software do you use to do that? How do you
mm,
run your meeting? Also, the other big one is mission, vision, values. What's your mission, vision, and values? That's going to be really tight and not just developed. That has to be lived and breathed. So that's the first thing, having that robust strategy. If they don't have that, that's the problem we need to get stuck into first. And most of the time, they don't have that,
mm,
even large organizations. The second one is the leadership team don't have a long-term development plan, strategic development plan. What happens is developments booked as an afterthought on an offsite. So we've got an offsite somewhere. It's, oh, we should do some training. That's not how you handle training. You want to be strategic. You want to use data. You want to understand where your current performance is. Um, and it's like a muscle. It's like a gym membership. You have to keep
mm,
on working at it. And nearly all the time, we don't really see any. We see leadership training as very reactive, sporadic situation, which it shouldn't be. Your leaders are the most important thing to drive everything. So there should be a long-term plan and regular training. So that's the second thing. Third thing, badly run meetings. And digging into that a little bit is that they don't have separate strategic meetings. It's just
mm,
tactical update for weather forecast meetings. Here's what's going on in my department. That's not a leadership team.
mm,
A leadership team is talking about leadership issues and solving leadership issues together, which they're all responsible for. So we find meetings that are poorly run and behavior. When we dig into the behavior, we often have a lot of high dominance behavior who are quite comfortable with ambiguity and fast moving. And they
mm,
take on a lot of product projects and they don't have that counterbalance to really understand the impact on the wider organization. Unpacking silent disagreements and artificial harmony and really understanding how behavioral diversity can improve decision making. So we find there's a lot of behavioral dynamics causing problems in that team. And there's a few others. There's a few other kind of common themes that will kind of pop out, but it's bizarre because we often see the same things.
mm.
Uh, Trust, lack of trust, a
Why do
lot
you think
of
that is? If you sort of can, sorry to interject a little bit, why do you think it is the same stuff? Is it because typically they're the same sort of behavioral profile that are in this
uh,
leadership role, or did they make the same mistakes? Like when you said, the silent agreement situation. I mean, I've sat in a number of different meetings and leadership ones as well, and I know exactly what you mean because you don't really feel
artificial harmony. Yeah,
artificial
well,
harmony.
let me unpack
Exactly,
it
you
a
don't
little.
feel that engaged.
Yeah, so it is very common, and it's not something to feel bad about. What
Mm,
we sometimes do is we look at what makes a high performing leadership team and we sticky note it. And the ones we have are communication and trust and conflict, psychological safety. And you'll find that there's about 15, 18 stickies and some clusters of the same thing.
mm,
And we ask them, say, well, where are you on that 1 to 10 journey? And they're normally about 4. So, and the themes are trust, um, conflict, silent disagreement. So where it comes from, and I use a model here called 5 behaviors. So when we think about trust, we're talking about vulnerability-based trust, not predictive trust. So vulnerability-based trust is I'm not very good at this. And so what happens is because we don't have vulnerability-based trust, and I think that comes from generations of not being able to admit weaknesses because it's a sign of weakness. I don't know. But if we have vulnerability-based trust, we're more likely to engage in healthy conflict. And when I mean healthy conflict, not mean-spirited conflict, or even worse, artificial harmony, which destroys teams. So if we can trust each other and be vulnerable, we're more likely to have really productive conflict. And then if we have really productive conflict, we're not going to do a silent disagreement. You're going to feel heard. And the leader may have to say, listen, I want you to do a disagree and commit on this one, but I really want to hear your opinions. But if we do that, we're more likely to get commitments on what needs to be done. And if we have commitments on what needs to be done, we can hold each other accountable and hold accountable to the right results. So that's what we see is there's almost like a process to work through, and it normally starts with trust. And that's the kind of process we use. There's some others out there, but it is quite common. If you're not actively being reflective and benchmarking where you are as a leadership team, you're going to have these problems. And so they're normally similar for that reason.
I think that's quite a good takeaway. Whoever's listening out there, that's just keeping. You can apply this though to a growing organization as well. It doesn't have to just be, these are mistakes that you can make as you grow and as you're growing a team. So just think about how you're running your meetings, and take that moving forward. I'm interested a little bit as well around the almost it sounds like the sort of immediate success, right? Because you've got 70 organizations that you're working with across the globe by the sounds of it. You've got some big organizations in there, 8x8 Virgin Voyages as well. I'm quite curious, and I'm sure others are as well. How, with the sales side, because your sales and marketing background, how did you enter into the market? What was your go-to-market strategy? And I suppose just on the back of that, what is the sort of key ROI that you're selling to these organizations, other than I suppose reducing turnover or improving productivity?
A little bit about our kind of GTM strategy. So coming from a sales background really helped with the business, and I think there's probably a lot better consultants out there for me. Where we grew so much so quickly is I was willing to sell and be very tenacious and pick up the phone. And I say pick up the phone. I'm 100%. On cold calls, closing 100%, every single cold call. But I've only ever made one cold call. So now, true story. My first cold call, we end up becoming quite a big customer, a big AI company. But the problem is after that, I can never do another cold call because I'll ruin. There's no chance I'm going to close my second one. So I can't. So I can't stay
One and done.
Yes, I can't do another call. So, but funny enough, that customer kept me going, and then on the back of that, we got a lot of referrals and stuff. So I did get a lot of help from my old company. They kind of almost seeded me in a way, but that was never enough really to sustain me. So I had to have a very robust strategy. So we drank our own champagne or our own dog food, whatever. We set up an EOS framework of goals. That was very systematic. Each quarter, we have a very strong focus on the particular segments. We produce lots of content. And we just grew through referrals and marketing and inbound strategy, which is actually really hard to do. And I wouldn't advise a lot of companies to do it. I actually have a free HubSpot enterprise account, which is a very big marketing infrastructure. And I used to work there, and they gave me a lifetime free subscription. So so when these people sort of say you can be like me and grow all this business, and we have grown a lot in 4 years, a bit of luck's been involved.
Right,
So it really annoys me when people are going, oh, you can be like me, I'll give you the formula. Like for the most part, there's a bit of luck, right time, right place, and definitely there's I don't want to take away on how hard I work and that experience and the impact, but we definitely had a bit of luck in a few places.
Sure.
So the go-to-market strategy is when we got those original clients, we decided not to do that much new business, and we focused totally on client success. So when we think about GTM, we think about retention, expansion, and new business. I didn't do much new business. All I focused on was client success. And we actually went back to mission, vision, values. And when we set up our own mission, vision, values, one of them was better work, better world. And we decided, against all advice, that we just weren't going to chase dollars. A lot of these consultancies charge per hour.
Mm,
And we decided we weren't going to take that methodology. We were just going to do whatever it took to get these clients supporting their people better and people happier, with the idea that we could create the world a better place if we did that. And it seemed crazy. And I think in year 3, I was like, oh, maybe that was a mistake. Struggling here a bit. But then we started to see some like magical stuff happen. We had one of our smaller clients expand like crazy, and we saw loads of expansions and developments. So to go back to that question on what we did is we were very systematic in our process. We started with mission, vision, values. We built an infrastructure. We had our KPIs and our goals and our ways we're going to get there. We stuck to it, and that was very much focused on client success. So we produced loads of free materials to give to our clients. And again, a lot of our competitors are charging for all of this. But we
mm,
said, no, we're going to produce like a how to run meetings with predictive index, which is like our own intellectual property, and we gave it to our clients. So it was an unusual strategy, and again, a bit of advice there is just tenacity. If you're trying to grow a business like everybody else, it's probably not going to work. So I took
mm.
that approach. You know, what can I do that was different? Now I do have a GTM director, and it seems a bit weird because that's my background. I should do that, but I can't do everything.
Yeah.
So we made the decision that I was going to focus on delivery and marketing, and I do have to do all that shit what no one else has to do. You know, we do have an admin department, but there's some stuff as a CEO which I hate doing, but someone has to do it. So I
Mhm.
still got 25% of my job, which is just really boring, crappy stuff like sorting out pensions and 401ks. But anyway, but for the most part, I'm delivery and marketing. And I have a GTM director who does all the retention and renewals and new business and stuff.
Right.
So that's how we do that part. And I think there was a second question, wasn't there? And I can't remember
It
what
was
that
about
was.
sort of yeah, it's about sort of delivering the ROI. So like as part of
Yeah.
your GTM strategy, that's sort of at the forefront of most things when you're trying to sell it because you're giving away the elements for free and people that are thinking, oh, maybe there is something that I could give away for free in my business as well. Like how do you badge that up? How do you essentially package that to that organization? But then also how do you really hit the right notes at the right time. Like I said earlier, reducing turnover is a big one, and then also improving productivity. Everyone wants
Yeah.
to do that, right? So how did you sort of communicate that to clients?
So in when we do new business, we often start with a free talent hiring talent strategy, and it's worth about $5,000-6,000. So what we do is we assess the team you're
Mm,
hiring into. So maybe it's a leadership team. Sometimes we just do a leadership team analysis. Sometimes it's hiring focused, but we assess the team, and then we map using science the strategy against that team. So what that's going to do is help you understand your current team dynamics, what you're trying to achieve, and where you may have a gap or where you may need to build more behavior. Then we can analyze the candidates
mm,
and see how they fit in that team. So we often do a kind of free talent strategy session. And if they don't move forward, that's fine. They've got an amazing bit of information, and the report goes through all the team's strengths or caution areas. We give you some coaching tools and just give you loads of value. But what generally happens, I think 8 times out of 10, is that they see the value of replicating that and building. What we're trying to do is build job success predictability. That's what we do. We help you make better hires. And if you're not using a behavioral assessment in your hiring process, then you're crazy because
mm,
your hiring manager's gut does not make a better decision from using data, behavioral data. So we often use behavioral data and cognitive data. And what we're trying to do is make a better hiring decision. And the software costs a fraction of a bad hire. So a bad hire can be anything from 50 to 500K. The software
mm,
costs under that, or depends what tier you've got. So we find once we do a free land and expand, And again, it's not a salesy, it's just, hey, have this report. If you don't want to move forward, it's fine. But once they understand the impact using behavioral data is on hiring decisions, they usually figure out, okay, well, we should be doing this for all hires. It's crazy. We need to do it. So we have a very high, once we do that, we close 80, 90%. And it pays for itself. So
Yeah.
the hire solution, as I said, is cost of a bad hire. It is insignificant. So as long as you're making 3 or 4 hires a year, it's going to pay for itself. And then, and we've got validation studies we just did a big one for a retail company. And we realized if we had backdated and used behavioral data for previous year, and we wouldn't have hired for poor fits because it's a number rating, 1 to 10, yeah. If we removed the bottom 25% of poor to average fits with okay and above fits, we'd have gone from a 14 million loss to a 2 million gain. They were hiring store managers who just behaviorally weren't hardwired to do that job. It's like putting a left-hand person in a right-hand person's job. So
Yeah.
if we had backdated it, so they signed up immediately. It was a huge contract. But so the data on the hiring side is totally validated. You're going to make better hiring decisions. And we can talk about Head Heart Briefcase later, but there's another methodology we use to increase those hiring decisions even further. So that's the hiring side. On the development side, we like to use data. So we either use engagement scores. There's a number of ways we can kind of link back to ROI. So whether it's surveys, we do a 5 behavior leadership score. We can do an employee survey. We can look at retention numbers. We can look at management performance numbers. We always start off. That's the first thing we do in engagements is we work out, okay, how are we going to improve ROI on this? So the hiring part's easy, really easy. If you don't have a behavioral assessment and cognitive assessment, your hiring process, just do it. Just do it. We got all the data. We can just show you. I refuse to even sell it because it pays for itself. The development side needs a little bit more work. There's a bit of commitments you need to make internally to make sure you're tracking the right numbers. And actually, a lot of the time, that's the first bit of work we do. They're not tracking retention well enough or management scores or engagement scores. So that's the first part we try and do. And then we try and improve on those scores. And with retention, that's an easy number to see if you're doing better. If managers are managing better, numbers go up, performance metrics go up, and retention numbers go up. And that's what we're working with. That's a great question, by the way, and it's so important.
Yeah, I don't think it's spoken about enough. And I think again at all levels, if you're making your first hire or if you're making your 100th hire, it's equally as important. Now, I suppose flipping it from making hires, but to understanding buyers. Now we touched on this a little bit last week, and you mentioned that understanding your buyers is so unbelievably important, and almost doing an assessment on them. How would you go about that? How would you, I don't want to use the word profile, but I'm going to. How would you profile them, and how would you then try to understand how their mind works, and then try and find a methodology or a solution to sell into them?
What do you mean? What do you mean the audience? How do you reduce unconscious bias by the recruiter or the hiring manager, or how do you assess a candidate?
More from the hiring manager. So how do you
Okay.
know what is the profile that you're going into trying to work with to try and find their solution for? So I'm working a role, and I've just got a brand new hiring manager I don't know that well, and I want to
Yeah.
understand how their mind works a little bit better, so then we can sync up and we can communicate
Okay.
effectively. How would you go about that whole conversation? Because I think there's a lot of people out there that would go, "Ooh, I don't want to waste their time. I don't want to piss them off, maybe, because I've
This
just
is
got the client, So
this is
there's a
such a great question. This is an amazing question because it's very common, yeah. So what happens, and we learned the hard way. What happens is the CHRO or the CEO is like, okay, we got a retention problem.
Mm.
We sell the solution and go, hey, we know that what you're trying to do is improve job success predictability. And to do that, we need to set up a system. So we use Head Heart Briefcase. So we want to look at the head, which is cognitive and behavioral. We want to look at value fit, and we want to look at experience, skills, and qualifications. Yeah. If we can put all that data together, we're going to make a better hiring decision. So we go in and do a great sales pitch, and the CEO or CHR will go, yes, let's do it. Then we get to the hiring managers, and they're like, like, piss off in an
Yeah.
English I can speak. I never say that word anymore because I'm working with a lot of Americans. And so this is how we deal with it because it's definitely an issue. First of all, understanding why they're a little bit pissed off.
Mm.
And people don't like change. People think behavioral data is voodoo. They think it's like, so we need to kind of resell the solution to them. Now, the first thing, they think their gut is going to make a better hiring decision from you, which is absolutely wrong. But you need to convince them that. So the first thing is what we do is quite often when we do their assessments, they're normally high A, which is high dominance. So they're high behavioral drive to influence people and events. So of course they don't like your idea. It's not their idea. Yeah. So that's the first thing when, we tackle. And it's like, normally that makes them laugh a bit. So you realize, oh yeah, I'm hardwired to kind of be combative and get my own way. And the data tells them that. So once we put the data in front of them, it's like it almost, eradicates that annoyance that you're there asking all these questions and implementing your process on it. So that's the first part. But the second part there's three parts. What we find is they've seen DISC before, or they've seen something before. Now, most of the stuff they've seen before isn't validated for hiring. DISC is not validated for hiring for a very good reason. So it's only a handful of these assessments which are. And again, I'd recommend any assessments as long as it's validated. Otherwise, legally, you can get yourself into a lot of trouble. If you're making someone's job decision based on assessments which hasn't been independently validated by one of the main governing bodies like PSYOP, you're legally in a very bad place. And there was an incident a few years ago where someone committed suicide because they didn't get a job, and they were using a forced choice assessment. So predictive index, for example, is an open choice assessment. It's not a test. It's an assessment. There's no right or wrong answers. Also, you're not making a decision on predictive index. It's just a data set to help you. Now, a lot of my clients are just using it to understand how to support you once you're in the job. But what we're trying to do is improve job success predictability by using multiple data sources. So this is the second point, is speaking to the hiring manager and saying, we just want to give you a bit more information to make a better decision. So when we talk about Head Heart Briefcase, we like to recommend the heads for predictive index part, cognitive and behavior. The heart is values and culture fit. And we often recommend a totally different person doing that interview and asking about, maybe transparency is one of your values. And so can you give me an example of transparency? And you can put a number on that score. So then you got a separate number score. And that person interviewing can be someone up and coming. It's a win-win-win. The candidates being interviewed by someone different in the organization, so it's a better experience for the candidate. The person interviewing is maybe younger and not had experience of interviewing, so they're getting development, and the company's getting another bit of data to help them make a decision. Last of all, we put a number on the briefcase, which is their qualifications, experience, and skills. So we're going to take all that data, and that's going to help us make a better decision. So going back to your question is, how do we get past that hiring manager? Is that you're not saying you're making a decision on PI, predictive index. This is just going to help you. It may be their predictive index isn't in alignment with what the job needs, because we assess the job and then map the candidate, and it may be they're slightly out, and that's okay. At least we know in 4 months when they're not doing an expense report on time, we know why. Yeah, it's not a shock. So we can support them. So that's the second one. The last one is, this is the best one, and my largest client is off the back of doing this. We originally sold a very small hire engagement to a small team, and it didn't get used because they stopped hiring because they had a hiring freeze. But another department had to make some hiring. I said, well, let me use predictive index for this department. And they're like, okay. I think they were just trying to get rid of me. So I had the meeting with a hiring manager, and he did not want to be there. There was a hiring team. There's like 4 of them. Like, they did not want to be talking to me. Like,
Was
and
it a
numerous
Friday
negative
afternoon by any
things.
chance?
Yeah. They're like, but what I did is I uploaded a team into the team product. So we can now look at behavior as a team, as a collective. So not just individual, but we can analyze the team's collective behavior, their strengths and challenges, and we can map strategy onto that team to see where they're going to struggle because they're behaviorally misaligned. Now that's something they haven't seen. They've
Mm.
often seen a DISC assessment or a Myers-Briggs assessment. But looking at how likely are you going to achieve your goals? And if you're misaligned, that reduces because most goals are missed due to people. So we mapped out their team on a matrix to look at all the behaviors, and we mapped a strategy on that. Oh, they changed, like literally an instant kind of like body change, asking questions. Oh, Diana, she's definitely there. That explains everything. Oh, no wonder Bob, doesn't like doing that or is struggling in this area, because he's not a natural collaborator. He's right in the independent spot. And he goes, oh, and it was like, yes, we need more people in this class. And it was like everything changed. And that
Wow.
account became one of our biggest global accounts. And we have team types. I said earlier, we have individual names like captain, maverick, collaborator. We have team types, and they were a pathfinding team as a team type, as a collective team. And their actually department was called the pathfinding department, which is like a huge
That's good then.
coincidence. But as a result, the sales director spoke to the CEO and said, this is the best. We need the whole company doing this. And that's one of our big growth areas. So I hope that helps. But yeah, it was such a good question because being a recruiter, I know what it's like. We don't do recruiting. We just set up the technology to help with better recruiting.
Mm.
But yeah, we see this kind of prickly friction quite often with hiring managers being told to use a system that, they're a little bit skeptical about. But we find we can get past that.
Yeah, I've definitely experienced that sort of friction in the past where uh, people always talk about change in a positive light, but then when it actually comes to doing the change, it's quite daunting and quite a hard sell. So no,
And
that
actually, as a reason for that, we are either hardwired, it's called patience. And when we say patience, it's not patience as you think about patience, but we either have high or low patience. High meaning that you do not like change. You like consistency and stability, yeah? Then the other behavior opposite to that is that you enjoy change and variety. So on the high side, you've got your starters, finishers, you've got your long distance runners, and on the low side, you've got your decathletes. And it's a hard wiring. Sometimes you're in the middle and you're a bit situational and you can stretch a little.
mm,
But for further your behavior magnifies, is they're 2 different people, and that's where a lot of friction comes from. So a lot of people don't like change, and a lot of people thrive off change. But then if you add dominance into the mix, that influence people and events, you're either, if you're on the high side and it's not your idea, even if you do like change, you're still not going to like it. So we can unpick that behavior and understand and explain that to these hiring managers, and we can kind of work through it and get there. And they start seeing after a while. So yeah.
I just love I love the subject. I think everyone as a business leader, as a department head, or even an entrepreneur is a little bit obsessed with behavioral science. And I think even if you're in sales, actually, you are as well because you want to understand people and how they work. And I think there are some
Have you
real
ever done
golden
a
nugget. Go on, sorry.
Ever done a sales call when you know the person opposite you is just not
Not
gelling with
into
you?
it. Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh
yeah.
yeah.
It's
Yeah.
normally just because of natural hardwiring and a different behavior. And there's some
Yeah.
things we can do. We can send the information ahead of time so we've got time to digest. We can adapt the way we communicate. But yeah, it's
It's
such a great
it's
subject.
it's so difficult though as well at the same time because new business you mentioned earlier, and pioneering and going out there and trying to acquire new companies to hire for or new companies to sell into. It doesn't just have to be recruitment. You don't know the individual on the end of the phone, and then it's really down to your job as the salesperson to build that rapport. But like you say, like if it's a circle going into a circular hole, great. But if it's a circle going into a square hole,
Yeah.
sometimes that doesn't matter how great you are at being charismatic
Yeah,
and
and that's
charming,
where we see it all the time in this is, and we can at least if we can get that awareness and understanding where that comes from, people can start stretching and making some changes and getting along better.
Yeah, absolutely. And now, look, I'm very conscious of time. We've actually run over 15 minutes, blown right past. But I did just want to ask maybe sort of a sort of final sort of wrap up couple questions, if that's all right. Are you okay for we
Yeah,
push over a little?
absolutely.
Cool. So it was more just around looking into the future for your organization, but also how you see the industry as a whole, the sort of behavioral side changing. So the next 3 to 5 years, we're going to see, without a doubt, a massive amount of change in the way that we interact. And maybe there will not be, or there hasn't been a time yet for the need for the behavioral assessment to be so prominent within industry, right? Because more AI comes into it, the more we leverage, systems to do the bulk admin, the thinking almost for us. How
Mhm.
do you envision or what do you think are going to be the main challenges and changes that are going to happen within the next 3 to 5 years, and how do you think that might impact your organization?
Yeah, I popped onto an app the other day and it kind of sort of gave you an analysis of a company's health as a result of the impact of AI. And it kind of said that my business is already dead. It's like, great. And but
Really,
actually,
I think it's the other way.
no, it's what AI is not going to impact um the hiring side because you you kind of ultimately, I mean, you can put in your chat GTP, what behavioral style do you think I am? And it's going to tell you, but that's not validated, yeah. So there, because of the legal implications of hiring people, you're going to have to use a validated assessment. So AI is not going to replace that. Then also AI is not going to replace the in-person training we do. But what it will do, it will help improve the application and implementation of behavioral science. So when we work for an organization, making it sticky, because you said you did DISC before. What happens is someone does a DISC assessment, they go, oh, this is amazing, it's really useful, and then they never use it. So how AI can help is making better behavioral interactions and communication more habitual and more easy in the workplace. So you'll see a lot more, I'm having a meeting with Barbara. How should I prepare for the meeting? So it will take your existing behavioral data, which needs to be validated. So we'll probably, and by the way, we're starting to see this in Predictive Index. They've got this feature, just launched it. You're not going to change having to do an official behavioral assessment, but you are going to get better insights in the working day. What do you have to factor in this meeting? Oh, this meeting's got full of people who aren't very good at detail. So, pull in Sarah because she's very good at area and try and elevate her. So it's going to give you better insight and practical tips and applying this knowledge, yeah, which is great. The other thing in the industry we're going to see is a lot of consolidation with organizations buying organizations. It's a big growth market. And there was a period a couple of years ago when there was these behavioral science companies popping up everywhere. They're going to die. We're going to see the top 5 or 6 merge into like ADPs or work days, and we're going to see some consolidation. And then what's going to happen to these standalone platforms are going to move into your workday or ADP tech stack. So we'll see
Mm.
better consolidation and usage of behavioral science through tools in the workplace.
No,
which is
I
kind
think,
of exciting.
yeah, I think this sort of streamline element will be massive because there's, I mean, you're seeing it so much already at a base level. I'm sure there's some parts of your organization that are already incorporating AI just to make the boat go faster. And it's definitely a massive positive, but it's not a true replacement. And as you've already touched on, the thing that AI will struggle with the most is behavioral science, behavioral impact, and understanding
Yeah,
humans.
it would never, I don't think it will change the assessment process because of a
Mm,
legal situation, but it's going to definitely improve the way we apply it and use
mm,
it. And it's going
yeah,
to give you reminders, on how to improve your interactions, or if you're a manager, how to manage that employee better. Because we want to treat people how we want to be treated. And in fact, we can treat people how they want to be treated. So as long as we have the core base of their natural behavior, the software and AI is going to help you say, hey, Sarah's going to need a bit more detail here, or give Sarah 5 minutes to talk about her weekend before you get started. So it's going to give you, a few little nuggets and some more insight to improve workplace interactions. So AI is going to improve the way we apply behavioral science for better individual and team outcomes.
there you
Hopefully, I'm
go.
still valid for the next few years. I just need to get through the next 10 years until my kids go to college and I'm good. So as long, as long as I can hold on that long, then
I'm
I'm going
sure
to
you'll
catch
be.
up on all the TV shows I've not watched for 20 years.
I'm sure I'm sure you'll be fine, and there's plenty of time to catch up. But by that time, there'll be new ones that are better. So there you go.
We'll
You'll
have
always be safe.
we can have robots. I mean, we're just going to have robots. Like we could probably have this conversation with an AI agent, and you wouldn't even know. I could be like in 10 years' time, I could be just an AI virtual agent, and
Could be
who knows?
now.
It's crazy.
Maybe I am
Yeah,
one.
you can. Yeah.
No,
My
joking.
dad's been having very long conversations with AI and not realizing it.
Really? There you go.
Yeah, these AI
Well,
scams, like we're
maybe.
not even people now.
I see.
Yeah.
I was going a much more innocent route. Maybe there's a nice sort of route into care homes where, elderly people that want to have conversations all day can then have a conversation with AI. So maybe that's
Oh,
a business opportunity.
I've said to my wife, I'm getting a AI mistress because she's behaviorally the opposite to me. Okay, I need to talk to people. I need social interaction. She's the opposite behavior. She's just all day focused, heads down in spreadsheets. She's in compensation and benefits. Both work from home. She ignores me all day. And I go to the sandwich shop occasionally to talk to the lady in a sandwich. And I said, no, I'm getting at least this AI agent, mistress is going to say how funny my jokes are. So like I love it. Get some attention once
There you
for
go.
once.
There we go, folks. There you go. Oh, I love it.
As long
Well,
as you're
yeah,
happy, as long as you're
exactly.
happy, it's fine.
There's so many different opportunities with AI, and out of the conversation that I thought we'd have today, I can honestly say I don't think AI mistresses would have come into it, but there you go.
I mean, I don't know where that stands ethically, but I
Well,
just want I just want someone to laugh at my jokes. My kids, not even my kids, laugh at my jokes. So I just need,
uh,
someone
well,
to chat to.
we were talking about courses earlier. Maybe you need to go and expose yourself into, well, not expose yourself, sorry. Maybe you need to go and insert yourself into like a stand-up comedy sort of situation. I know Joe Rogan speaks a lot about the benefits of doing that and how it helps with a number of different other avenues in life. But yeah, then you'll
Well,
really know
so
if your jokes are funny or not.
yeah, well, seriously, we're hardwired to use these behavioral strengths, and they give us energy and happiness. If you're in a situation where you're not using it, and that's when you get kind of depressed. I mean, this is what we teach. We try and
Mm,
even when we're trying to get the right people in the right seats. And if
yeah.
they are in the right seats and they're using the strengths, they're more engaged and we retain them more. So that's generally what we're trying to do with behavioral sciences, make sure often you'll get someone have a promotion and they crash and burn. It's because you've just moved someone, to a totally different behavioral job and they're not happy. So you're absolutely right. We are hardwired to use some of your strengths. So yeah, maybe I need to go and do some comedy clubs and find a new audience for my jokes, my very
There you
bad,
go.
bad jokes.
I'll tell you what, I'll fly out and I'll just be there as a sort of a support network just to laugh at the ones that aren't getting more laugh,
Just, yeah,
more
yeah,
than
that's
one
what you
laugh.
need. You need a few stooges just to laugh at the flat ones.
Exactly, exactly. I do actually just off the back of that with promotions, the classic mistake that you see time and time and time again is people who are high achieving in sales, in a sales role, in a new business role that don't have a team, often get promoted into that manager position
Managers
or
and then do terrible.
what I think we understand maybe the why, but it'd be great to explain that a little bit more. But why is it from the organization side such a temptation to do that? I've never really
Yeah.
understood it.
Actually, the big study or the big story was IBM did that. IBM figured it out. They were taking all their top individual contributors and obviously making them sales managers.
Mm,
And then they realized by the data that, it wasn't working. And they started saying, okay, well, a manager's a different job. It's a totally different hardwiring. So if you think about an individual sales job, and there's different types of sales job, but quite often you have to have strong influence on people and events. You got to have strong extroversion. You're going to be with people all day. You've got to be comfortable with ambiguity. You've got to be fast paced. Whereas a manager role, you're looking at data more. You're looking at pipeline reviews. You're looking at forecasts. It's a totally different behavioral job. And no wonder you're taking it's like putting a left-hand person in a right-hand person's job. So it's a common mistake when building career pathing, and not understanding that a sales manager job is a totally different behavioral hardwiring from an individual contributor job. And now some can do it, and we can all stretch, but if
mm,
that stretch is significant and sustained, so that's the issue. Maybe you're hiring great sales reps and they're all the same profile, and the sales manager job, if it's a little stretch, we can do it. It's like jogging. We can do it. Eventually, we'll get a bit tired. If the stretch is significant and sustained, i.e., it's a totally different behavior for a long period, that's when you get burnout and people leaving and people struggling. So we all, particularly leaders, we all behaviorally stretch, but it's that when that stretch is long and significant, that's when you struggle. But yeah, sales manager job, and we've got the data and the assessments to analyze that, so we can actually we call them job targets. So we'll behaviorally analyze what a job needs, and we can do it by cloning top performers. We can do it for an assessment, and then we map the candidates. So if you've got that challenge, then let's analyze both jobs, and then let's look at all the team and see how aligned they are to both. And you'll see very visually why, because we have a little
mm.
target, and you'll see total misalignment. So that's quite easy to figure out now.
Yeah. No, well, there you go, folks. Don't fall into that trap. Yeah, if you do, you've got the sort of strategies to help. But
Yeah.
look, Damon, thank you so much for your time and insights and sharing everything with us today. I think that it was such an interesting listen, yeah, really looking forward to yeah, sort of cutting it up and editing it. But look, one last thing,
Yeah.
just before we go, where can our listeners learn more, or listeners learn more about you, the organization, and connect with you?
Yeah, our website is talentoptimizers.com.
I'll put that in the
I'm on
description.
LinkedIn as Damon Clark, and we're on all the socials as Talent Optimizers, or we have a YouTube channel called PI Hacks. PI is the software, predictive index we use a lot, and there's a lot of leadership insight stuff on our YouTube channel. But yeah, we should be out there if you do a search.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, yeah, look, thanks again so much for the time. I know we've run massively over and I'm keeping you from your Friday afternoon activities.